Welcome, everyone. This is episode 92. We are getting closer and closer to the big 100.
Very excited.
Very exciting. And as we have a very exciting guest for you and for us, we actually sat down with Melissa Rodway, the Canadian Wanderer, a few weeks ago when we were traveling around Mexico. And she is such an interesting woman that has really lived many lives and really explores a passion of ours, and that is travel around the world.
Yeah, it was really special to. We always love having guests on, but particularly when we talk about travel, is one of the things we're most passionate about in the world. And to speak to someone else who's also traveled extensively, hear their stories, hear about similarities and differences in our experiences, it was really really cool experience.
It was amazing. So we do hope you enjoy it and you'll learn everything about her and what she's up to right now in the episode. And just one disclaimer, we do apologize. Our audio is a little bit out of sorts. We try our best when we're traveling, going between Airbnbs, but it was a very echoey Airbnb we were in. We tried our best to edit it in the behind the scenes. But Melissa's audio is amazing, so that's really good. And we don't speak a right lot, so it's really not that bad. We do hope you enjoy it because there's lots of stories that I shared.
Absolutely, it's a good one. Enjoy.
Enjoy. On this episode, we are joined by Melissa Rodway, the fearless Canadian wanderer behind FLY Travel Radio and the author of The People You Meet, a fun, heartfelt journey through Southeast Asia, exploring the contrast between luxury hotels and budget backpacking while showing the wild adventures and unforgettable characters who change you along the way. She's trekked the Alps, ridden chicken buses through Central America, eaten pho in Vietnam, paraglided in Nepal, and traveled extensively across Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. Melissa has even lived in 6 Canadian cities, which I was surprised to hear of how many that was. And she says it's escapism issues, whereas we say she was born to travel. Melissa turns every journey into a story that will make you laugh, marvel, and immediately want to pack a bag. Get ready for wild travel tales, hilarious misadventures, and the unforgettable people who make the journey worth it. Welcome, Melissa.
That's a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
No, it's great to have you come on board. And, we really love guests. When we're doing our research on you, we really appreciate when guests come on to a podcast with a lifetime of adventures because we love our adventure as well. And it just gives us so much to unpack. Whilst we might not get to everything, because I know you've got so much you've done in your life, but, it makes the episode very exciting. So let's not wait any longer and jump straight into the fun stuff. So when I was learning about you, there was a really interesting thing that I read that struck me. And if it's okay with you, I'm just going to read this from your bio because I think people are going to relate to this quite a bit. I know I did. So I'm known to cry almost the entire length of the journey home and have had several meltdowns during the car ride back from a mere 3 days of camping in the Kuwaitis. It is not that I do not like my regular life, but I feel very taken with that feeling of freedom and the unknown. I am most present when I am away. Now, I found that really interesting when I was reading that, and I'd just love you to explore that a bit more with ourselves and our listeners, and maybe tell me if you still resonate with that today.
Yes, I would say that is, I was just away this weekend and only like 2 hours away. And it's always sad for me to leave. And I don't know. I think it's just that we get very, stuck in our patterns and our routines in regular life. And I think there's such a freedom and an excitement when you kind of take on a new life for a while, even if it's like a multi-day camping trip, no matter what it is. I'm just very drawn to having a different experience. And I think I like the way that I feel, I think that's why we do these things. I think anyone who repeatedly travels, like the two of you, and who repeatedly is seeking new adventures and trips, the reason I believe for all of us is that we feel alive, we feel um more open to things. We're living in the present moment. It's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen to you. And there's also um a part of your personality and your character that's access that I don't believe we live with in regular life. I think there's like we can breathe better. We can feel like we're moving through the world differently. And when you know that all of that is ending and you're going back to the knowable world, it's for me very, very, very challenging. There's only one time where I was happy to come home. It's in my book, The People You Meet, and the last month there was spent in China, and that was a very, very hard time traveling for me, and that was the only time I've ever been like, I'm done and I'm ready to come home. The rest of the time it's a battle, and especially if you've been in the mountains, I find the mountains, it takes me a very long time to recover and get back to normal.
I can really resonate with that as a passionate hiker myself. I can resonate with that a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, it's tough, like, I live in a big city, so I even experienced this last summer. I was in, the Dolomites in Italy,
Yeah.
and, the amazing thing and the almost terrifying thing about travel is that you can, at the beginning of the day, start off in one country and end up, halfway around the world sometimes, but I mean, it's an easy flight. For me, from Italy to Canada, it's like 6, 7 hours. But to go from like a week in the mountains, like living in mountain huts, to all of a sudden being on streetcars and subways and right in the heart of this city, you actually even feel your nervous system is like suffering, and that like it's your whole body is actually crying about what's happening to it. It feels like pretty traumatic to be ripped out of an environment like that and put right back into a city.
Yeah, I feel that.
I like how you describe travel as like that sense of freedom as well, and that a way of being present. Is there anything else for you that does that, or anything that you think that if someone isn't able to travel? Is there anything else that you think can give you that sense of freedom in the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been going anywhere for a while lately, and I'm feeling a little bit cagey. So I think you have to dial into the other things. I mean, travel is one amazing outlet, but let's face it, it's not always affordable for everybody, and it's not always the reality for a lot of people. And sometimes the timing isn't right. I'm in one of those places. So I think though that adventure lives in us no matter what. It can live in you in the form of a talent like singing, painting, doing a puzzle, like whatever it is that turns your body on fire. We have to tune into that, because you can't also always just rely on travel to like fill that. So it can be also exploring your own backyard, your own city, taking a dance class. Like for me, I started my radio show many years ago when I couldn't travel. So that was like a whole other journey. That was a whole other adventure into the broadcasting, interviewing, figuring out how to even do this. I think we're all built with a million things that we can do. We just have to listen to what our talents are, what our body's telling us, and like can find your own adventure doing all of those things. It's not always about a plane ticket.
Yeah, that you really like struck a chord with me to coin a phrase. But I'm a musician. I've recently also found a love of sketching, and the whole flight here, the whole 10 hours basically, I was sketching, and it was in itself enjoyable rather than just the travel element that was exciting. Having that passion, because I suppose travel is a passion, right? Like so, doing that it inspires the same sort of feeling.
Totally. And I think I've talked about this in other interviews, but I think I mean, when you're built with certain talents and passions and interests, and I think as a human, we're discovering this our whole entire lives until the day we die. But if you don't tune in to some of these things, I think you can live with an agitation where something's not being met or served within your body, within your soul. And it sounds like even for you on the plane when you started sketching, you probably felt calmer and happier and life felt better. And so yeah, I think once we dial into those things, it makes us feel like we're living how we're supposed to be, or in that moment. I mean, life is not perfect, life is full of challenges, but when we dial into these things that serve us, your whole dynamics shift and change for the better.
Absolutely. I love that. Getting more comfortable to explore yourself, especially, you know, ignoring those outside pressures that might be saying you can't do this or that. Explore yourself no matter how small or big.
Mm-hmm.
And with the countries that you visited, I know it's been extensive. And I don't want to ask the question of, oh, which is your favorite country? Because we get asked that a lot and it's so difficult to answer. And I also think it's quite dependent on what that person likes as well, maybe a best country for them. So I want to ask it in a different way. Out of all the countries you visited, which would you say most aligns with your values and personality and almost feels like a natural second home to you?
Yes, I love this question and I agree with you. I mean, I have people all the time, they're like, where should I go? And I actually hate that question because I'm not them and I'm not built like them. So I think it's a dumb question. However, I love the other parts of this where you've totally hit the nail on the head, where you go places and you feel suddenly like you belong, it's home. And sometimes there's no explanation for that. So for me, the places are where you are. So Mexico, Central America was big for me, South America as well, but I would say more Mexico and Central America. There's something for me when I land in that part of the world that instantly makes sense. And I don't speak Spanish that well. I should speak it much better for all the places I've been, but I don't. I can get by, but I speak beer Spanish. But even like you can land in an airport and even like just going into the airport, you feel like this feels right, this feels good. So that part of the world certainly makes sense to me. I'm a late bloomer to Europe. I think I'm in my 50s now, and Europe actually feels really like easy compared to some of the other stuff that I've done. So it's like, oh, this is kind of nice. So there are parts of Europe where I feel like that as well. But I think the reverse is also really interesting. Like I wrote this book about Southeast Asia, and while I really enjoyed it and it was very beautiful and it's all that everything says, I never felt that same sense of belonging or that this was my second home. I did not ever for 1 second feel that. And I think that that's a really interesting question. And I love talking to people about that who move around the world and travel because we're all so different. And like, why do some of us feel this and some of us don't? And what is it about this place? And it's so fascinating that as to why you can land somewhere and it just makes complete sense to you. I love that question. So yeah. Central America, Europe, and parts of Canada I really love as well.
That's lovely. We haven't yet managed to get to Canada, but it's on our list for later this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Is there you mentioned having a more difficult time in China. Is there a country that you feel like pushed you to your limits? Would that be the most difficult travel experience that you had?
Yeah, certainly. And to be fair, I had been on the road for 4 months. That was my fourth month. And the pace that we were on was like every 2 days, we were pretty much on the move. I would say there was only a few times where we stayed anywhere longer than 3 or 4 nights. So that was rare. So I was very, very tired by that point. Hadn't really experienced slow travel at that point. It wasn't really a thing. And China was challenging in terms of communication. I mean, in the cities, Beijing and Shanghai, it's fine. But I was also in some very, very rural areas where that was not even an option to speak any English. And yeah, it was just very different, and um, it was very crowded and very hot. And I was on a lot of trains and buses and traveling like with real local style, situations. So yeah, I would say that was the only country really that I was like, I'd rather be at a resort right now.
It sounds quite intense. We haven't really done any of that sort of fast-paced travel. We tend to choose to have at the very least 2 weeks, but usually a month, don't
Yeah,
we?
we call
At
it
least.
we call ourselves slow mads.
That's good. I'm slowly also getting into that, but that was just not the scene for me for many, many, many years. But I dig it too. I spent 5 weeks in Quebec City, and that was like one of the best things I've ever done.
And is there, of all the places that you've been, did you feel like any helped you learn something about yourself or like overcome any personal goals or challenges?
Mm, I don't think it's. I mean, some countries can challenge you just on like for obvious reasons, every country is different in terms of how the people communicate or what their underlying rules are of certain places. But I don't find it's the countries, it's the people that always teach me the things that I need to be open to. So it could be, locals or even you travel, you meet people sometimes just for even 10 minutes that like leave an impact on you, or it's the people you end up traveling with for days or weeks or however long you're with them. So I think it's always, for me, it's always, always, always about the people. I think you can be attached to geography and ways of living. I mean, whenever I come home from Europe, I think, wow, they really know what they're doing here. And like, I was in Croatia and Italy and France. I mean, it's very different than how North Americans live. And that I do feel like you have to pay attention to. Just, I feel North Americans are very type A and we're chasing the wrong things and we're climbing the ladders. And whenever I'm in other places, I do really, really relish in that kind of lifestyle where they're not eating dinner in 10 minutes and like dinner is an actual event and they take time and the food is like tastes way better and all of those things I think can teach you something. But yeah, I think it's usually the people that come across your path and trigger you and challenge you. And you have to, I think the thing about traveling is that you drop all your judgments and biases and you're kind of open to everyone and anyone that comes your way. And I think we realize that in real life, we're not always as open as we are traveling. And I think that's also a huge lesson on every trip that you go on.
Absolutely. And that's on our podcast. We, after every place we've been, we say our favorite, least favorite of where we've been. And it's so hard to not say the people as our favorite thing every time. We're like, it's a boring answer. It's always the people that stand out in each place.
Totally. And it's even, like in countries where there's maybe a lower socioeconomic status, I think we all learn from that those communities are the happiest. They're the people that are living together and helping each other, and there's a strong sense of community, and they don't really care about the latest fashions and gadgets and who got a promotion. It's not even relevant. And they seem much happier and kinder than the rest of the world, to be honest, or in North America, certainly. So I think that's always a reminder that sometimes less is more. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much to learn about how we feel about places and how other cultures are living. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's been incredible from our travels as well, learning about the people. It does start to question what you value in life, doesn't it? And I think you've really articulated it there. And I want to go into you mentioned at the start about your hiking. You were in the Dolomites in Italy. And, hiking's always been a passion for me. But I have noticed for many people, it tends to come later in life, even though I've always loved hiking. And I think it's maybe that desire to feel more connected to the earth and really be more present in nature. I feel like nature makes you more present. It has that strange feeling, especially if you push yourselves to the extremes, like doing a solo hike or doing a wild camp. It really, it's a. I can't really describe it, and I know I'm sure you have a similar sentiment. You can't really describe it unless you do it. And of course, Canada is very famous for a stunning environment and incredible hikes. So I would love to know, maybe a little selfishly, What was your most memorable trek, and have any of your treks ever changed something in you?
I'm a real mountain person. I've done a couple of jungle treks and I absolutely hate them. So I think I'm done with those, but never say never. And I think, you know, the jungle stuff is what is the most challenging because, when people just talk about a hiking trip, you don't always think about the environment, right? So when you're in the jungle, it's just very, very challenging. It's very hot. I don't find it always that beautiful. I find it brings out the worst in me, but also it brings out the best part of my sense of humor. It's a real struggle. But the mountains, yes, I feel there's a real I know exactly what you're saying. Like there's this real connection and relationship, I think, to those types of experiences. And I think you don't end a trip like that the same person as you started out. I think there's something about walking and just that simplicity. Like I think what I love about those hikes is it's a simple lifestyle. I love getting up early on those trips and all you really need to do that day is pack your bag, drink some water, eat food when you need to have a rest here and there and like keep going. And if you're lucky, you can have a beer at the end of the day, be in bed by 8 and do it all again the next day. I love the simplicity of that sort of lifestyle and experience. And I think there's something to be said for moving by your own steam through a country or a region. And just being outside all day is so very good for you. And I think I've even read something about how your body chemistry changes after being outside, like for a couple of days nonstop. There's so much to those experiences. And I don't even remember your question, but I'm just going to keep going with what I think.
It was to understand your most memorable moment
Yeah.
trek.
Yeah, so for me, it's always the mountains. I feel like a lot comes out in your mind, and sometimes it's the not thinking. I think we think too much, and I just love like the rhythm. But I'd say Mont Blanc is my favorite. It's the France, Italy, Switzerland hike. I love it. I've done some treks in Nepal and Jordan and other places, but I'm a true I love the mountains. There's something amazing about that.
Wow. That sounds incredible. It's interesting you mentioned not liking the jungles.
No.
I found myself in the jungle for the first time in Laos last year, and I loved it.
Mm.
And I loved sort of you just instantly. I've never felt so quickly on my own. Like on the mountains, I can still see really far, but once you're in the jungle and you only walk like 10 minutes away from the group, and you can't hear them, all you can hear is the insects. It's like, do I even exist anymore? Am I? It's like it's as if I don't exist, and like there's just you can't even understand which way to go, or it's a bit disorientating. But I can also understand there is a lot more tough that comes with it. I mean, the humidity and the mosquitoes are brutal.
Well, I'm gonna ask you this. When you were in Laos, was your hike full of leeches? Because my hike was like we had leeches attacking us all like everywhere, dropping from bushes, the sky. It felt like all over the ground. So my memory of this is the guy in front of me had shorts on and tennis shoes, and the back of his calves were sheer blood because he had like 6 leeches on every leg.
Ouch.
So yeah, so we had leeches, we had bees, we didn't have enough water. Like my jungle experience was probably not like yours.
Yeah, doesn't sound good. I would not enjoy that. Yeah, I must have been very lucky.
Very lucky.
The hardest thing about Laos for me was because we were in the which was basically just entirely jungle, and it was all the insects and creepy crawlies, and I walked face first into a cobweb. That wasn't fun.
Yeah, I love Prabang. It's amazing. I love that little city. It's cool.
Melissa, you wrote the book, The People You Meet. I'd love to ask you about that. It's available on Amazon for our listeners, and we'll add the links in as well so everyone can access that. And that grew out of you sending long emails to family and friends about your travels. When you were writing those emails, did you think initially, oh, this could bring this together and it could inspire a book? Or was it, how did it come about, the book, from those emails?
So The reason those started was I was with a partner who worked in luxury travel. And when you are on a multi-month trip with someone who has a purpose, so he was not every day, but frequently meeting with tour operators and people in luxury hotels to create future business. When you are the plus one I was 35, it's very different than being the one who's on a mission. And I got a little bit restless in my head. And that's where I discovered that I needed a purpose. So I would be sitting on long trains and buses, sometimes like 36 hours. And I started creating these stories in my head about what we were seeing and doing and where we were going. And that became my job in itself. So once a week, this was like 2010, we didn't have cell phones, so I was going to internet cafes and I would send these emails home to friends and family, and they really liked them and they sent them to their friends and family. So I had very good feedback there. And when I left the trip, there was a part of me that thought I probably have enough material for a book, but it took me 15 years to decide if I wanted to do it. It's pretty revealing when you write a book like that. And yeah, so I was in and out of it, and then I just decided to go for it, and here we are.
Fantastic. Did you know that you wanted to write a book prior to that? I feel like a lot of people say, oh, I've got everyone's got a book in them. A lot of people think one day I'd like to write a book. Prior to that, was that ever on your radar?
I remember saying as a little girl that one day I would write a book, but I did not think about that at all on that trip. So, I mean, I've always been pretty good with writing, and writing is a big part of who I am, but I had no intentions before I started that trip about writing a book at all.
Yeah. Uh, in regards to traveling as a couple, we're obviously traveling together, and in fact, our very first international trip together was to Mexico for a month, which is, I think, pretty different how far.
It was, yeah.
Well, how did you find traveling as part of the couple? Like, what was the easiest part? What was the hardest part of traveling as a couple?
I think there's a lot of pros and cons. So the parts that I love are it's very nice to be with someone who has your back. And as a woman, it's a very different experience to have a man with you. I've done many trips on my own, and it's very different. So that part I really like. And it's fun to share big experiences with somebody, you know. I mean, um, yeah, doing certain things completely alone is really not the same. So I love all the sharing of that and the planning, and being able to put your backpack down so you can run to the bathroom is very, very nice when you're with somebody. I think the downsides, and you can tell me if this is your experience, is that socially, to me, it can feel very isolating. So I think you can get stuck in a bit of a cocoon when you're with one person all the time, and you kind of are not always as approachable to other people, and some people don't even bother talking to you because you appear as a unit. So that part for me was always very challenging, and I sometimes felt very cut off. And I've done a lot of group trips, like adventure travel trips where you show up alone with a bunch of strangers, and I really like those. And sometimes I found on that multi-month journey I would see those groups of people, and I would actually like long for that, like just that camaraderie and the big group dynamics of like 10 people and just meeting fellow travelers. So but it can go both ways. I mean, I think both have their merits and both have their downfalls, like anything else you do in life, for sure. What about you guys?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the positive of like having a partner there, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
as a woman feeling, I suppose, more. Although I travelled a lot on my own, I never felt unsafe. But I think that was probably more naivety than it's many years ago. So I think having you there feels very safe and very nice.
Yeah, and on the flip side, similar to what you're saying, something that we've noticed, because we do enjoy so many of the same experiences, and we got together just under 5 years ago, so we're in our 30s now, and we live very independent lives. But once we've come together and done all these things together, we laugh because we've become quite codependent now, and it feels bizarre to even think of that because we were so independent and individually achieved so much. But that codependency there are times we like, oh, just wait for her, like when she's ready. I don't want to go down and speak to him. I don't want to go to the shop. And he's like, what are you talking like? And then he catches up like, I can go to a shop. Fine. I mean, it's that codependence. You've got to catch yourself. Oh, I know that's let me get down.
Yes, I that's so funny. I had moments like that too. I remember at one point, like even starting to ask my partner, like, "Do you think I should wear this today?" I was like, "I never do that." But yeah, you do. You become like one person, right? And there's some beautiful things about that, and then there's some like, uh-oh moments as well.
And in your book as well, I was keen, was there any, so I know you met many characters in your travels as you do, even those short moments, some, but is there a character or two that you just always comes to mind? Maybe a funny character, maybe a memorable character, maybe for the wrong reasons. Be a character. I would love the people to know about them.
There's two women that always come to mind from this book. So one of them was 70 years old. We were in Laos, in northern Laos, and we had kind of developed this little group of people. There were probably six of us, I think, that had come together and were traveling together for a week or two. And this woman just came out of nowhere in one of these little villages. She was from Israel and she was like just wild. And she had this like wonderful hair and she was tall and lanky and just like she was just a character right from the get-go. And I just really admired her because she had been traveling alone at 70 years of age as a woman through China, through India, and now through all these countries. And, but she was just like could never tell what was gonna come out of her mouth. So I will never forget her, and if you read my book, you'll know why. But the person that really is the most memorable is a woman who I met. She was in her 50s, and she taught me the lesson of knowing when it's time to go home. So she had done everything. This woman was so well traveled and had a very adventurous life, and I was with her in Laos, and she was looking at these two women who were like 25 maybe, these backpackers, and she was kind of studying them, and then she looked at me and she said, "It's they need to go home. Their trip should be over now." And I was like, "What?" I had no idea what she was talking about. So we had this amazing conversation about knowing when you've seen and done too much and that it's no longer you should no longer be there. Like and and it was just so life-changing for me because at the 4-month mark when I was in China, I had it happened to me where I was like, this has become a job. I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying this. I don't care about seeing anything anymore. I'm really, really done. And I was just missing like everything about normalcy and normal life. And I wasn't in a position where I could just go hang out somewhere for a month and rejoin my partner. And I think that's really changed how I travel now because I know I'm very prone to travel fatigue. And I think it's really not even fair to the country you're in if you're miserable and you don't want to be there. Like, we're human and there's a lot of travel judgment and travel ego on the road. And I think that you have to listen to when you're ready to go and you have to honor that and respect it and to be okay with it. And so that is a lesson that I will never forget.
That's really insightful, and I think that's something that's not spoken about often, like travel fatigue. I think people just think, "Oh, you should travel, travel, keep going, keep going."
Yeah,
And
there's a lot of pressure.
yeah, and I think a lot of people will just say, "Well, now I've planned to travel for this amount of time, so that's what I'm going to do." And you need to listen to yourself and listen to your environment. And like you say, it's
Mhm.
almost like a disrespect to the country if you're just there. And
Yeah, you're there and you're miserable. I mean, I think there's a lot of I certainly in the backpacking world, I know there's a lot of competition where people will be like, I've been on the road longer, I have more stamps, I've done this, I've done that, and I really hate those conversations because again, we're like leading our own journey here and I'm not you, you're not me, and it's just as long as you're not hurting anybody and you're out there for the right reasons. Nobody should really have any comments on anyone else's travels, but it's so silly, all that stuff. But yeah, there's a time to end it for sure.
I think that's a wonderful piece of advice for anyone, even mid-travel or thinking of travel. And maybe you'll say this is the same, but I still want to ask you this question before we get into our final segment is, what has been, would you say, your biggest learning about yourself from traveling all around the world?
I think the thing we just talked about is pretty huge for me, but I think it's being resilient because travel is unpredictable. I mean, you have no idea what's going to happen to you every day. As you guys know, when you wake up, whatever you have planned doesn't not it's not going to be seamless, and it's not going to be what you think it is. And so I think that I think that's what I love about it. I think that's the part that makes me feel alive and free and excited, and I think that's why a lot of us do it. So I think that's certainly an element. But again, it always for me comes back to the people and the conversations and me being aware of like things that I'm open to or that trigger me, or people really affect you, don't they? And what's thrown your way when they come at you. So I think there's not one thing for me. I think it's many, many things. And it's also how you feel when you're outside in the mountains or whatever. That is also very revealing to me about a part of you that's like needing to be acknowledged, that this is something that's in you that is important, that some part of your body composition is like being out there in that kind of wildness. I think there's a million things that it really teaches me, to be honest.
That's amazing. And I think that gives some insight to some people thinking about traveling. And I think at the end of it, what I've summarized from that is it is a very personal journey. And you are going to push yourself to limits, and just be okay to go with the journey and be okay with the learnings that appear. They're going to appear in strange moments and unexpected, but that's okay as long as you come back feeling a bit more understanding about who you are, maybe a bit more respectful to yourself. That sounds like what you were saying to me there, which I think is beautiful. We always like to wrap up the episode with a quick fire segment. So it's a very simple segment. We'll ask you 6 questions, and it's basically a this or that. So we'll give you 2 options, and you just tell us which option you prefer. So I'll kick us off. Solo travel or group travel?
Group travel,
Luxury travel or backpacking?
backpacking,
Mountains or beaches?
mountains.
Slow travel or fast-paced adventure?
Ooh, gosh, I think I'm still fast paced.
Planned itinerary or go with the flow?
A little bit of both.
Travel to escape or travel to find yourself?
I always struggle with this. We'll say travel to escape.
I appreciate your honesty as well. Well, that's interesting. I feel like just that alone, if someone even just listens to that segment, they would learn a lot about yourself and what traveling is about. So we really appreciate your answers. We want our listeners to learn even further past this episode about you, Melissa. So please do let our listeners know where they can find you, and if there are any particular projects maybe you want to let them know about you're doing right now.
Sure. So Instagram is the best. I'm at fly_travel_media. You can listen to any of my interviews on flyrodway.com. So I have 180 episodes there when I used to have my radio show. Let's see. Amazon is where my book is, The People You Meet by Melissa Rodway. Make sure you look for that one because I learned too late that many books have that title. And I am starting a second book, but I'm having a very hard time finding enough time to get it done. But that's coming. And I'm in a very in-between phase right now. So I'm not really sure where I'm headed here next, but I'm sure it will be fabulous once I figure it out.
I know it well. I know. It sounds like you're on the journey to another chapter, and we're going to keep an eye on you to see when that second book comes out. And we would love to bring you back on the podcast to dissect that book as well.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Melissa. We really do appreciate you coming onto the podcast. We'll put all the links into the description so all of our listeners can go check you out and see what you're up to.
Thank you so much. It was really lovely to meet you.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. And I wish I was there with you in Mexico.
Another adventure wrapped up.
But the journey never ends.
Keep your bags packed for the next one. And remember, when in doubt, just say, Yalla Habibi. See you next time.